Spider-Man Brand New Day has one big problem, which I can't talk about because this is spoiler-free. I'll try, because you can't really review the movie without at least touching on it somewhat. That problem is the villain. Well, it has a lot of little problems, but most of them stem from the villain. Let me put it this way. Emotionally, this is a very good film. It's a very Spider-Man worthy story. It's got a lot of good emotional beats. It's got the feels on deck. It'll make you laugh, cry, gasp, be sad, and everything in between. So emotionally, it's very good. Logically, it's dog shit. Well, not all of it, but again, most of the stuff concerning the villain is brain rot central. And this is generally why I avoid giving number scores to movies, or letter grades or anything like that. I mean, I'll do tier lists every now and then. I'll organize movies in very broad categories of quality, but that's about it. What do you do when a movie is really good with regards to one metric and really piss poor with regards to another one? You give the first metric a 10 out of 10 and the second metric a 1 out of 10 and it averages out to a 5 out of 10? It's not really reflective of the final product for most people, because depending on which of these two categories, emotion or logic you care about, you're going to get different mileages out of this film. Brand New Day does a good job of hiding its logical problems. On a first viewing, I did notice the issue, and it did bother me, but not that much. I was able to compartmentalize it somewhat. But the more I think about it after the fact, the more it bothers me. It's similar to Man of Steel in many ways, like the tornado scene where Pa Kent needlessly dies, or the final battle, which racks up an astronomical kill count, such that we're wondering what we're even doing here in terms of heroics. That final battle, however, was at least somewhat defensible on a surface level, because you could argue that Superman had trouble steering Zod to a less populated area. But even that argument is off the table in the case of Brain Dead Day. I can talk about some other things to give you a better idea. This movie strives to incorporate elements of all previous Spider-Man films. The action is very Sam Raimi-like, which is great because it was one of the strong suits of those films. There's a certain grace and elegance and visual appeal and aesthetic, like a pleasing aesthetic to them. Because Homecoming and Far From Home's web spinning and especially combat were pretty much just Scorpion's get over here move, copy-pasted like 6 times, done. Very mid, very unimaginative, but the web slinging in this is Everest levels of peak. Apparently they took inspiration from the Insomniac games, and I believe it, because Spider-Man combos his way through like hundreds of goons in increasingly creative ways, and he also saves like 50 people in this movie, if not more. And the way he saves most of these people is exhilarating. Usually the combat is exciting in these, and the saving people is, you know, cars about to crash into a kid, you see it coming a mile away, everyone's yelling at the stupid fucking kid to move, the kid doesn't move, and then Spider-Man swings in and saves them. Whereas Brand New Day pretty much just 10x the process. A lot of times you barely just have like a second to take in that a group of people are in danger of getting shish kebabbed before Peter swoops in and saves them the only second. Because again, everything happens almost instantly. There's lots of scenes like that in this movie, which first of all is just exhilarating and aesthetically pleasing to watch, but also serves to showcase just how powerful Spider-Man really is when you think about it. Like, his senses border on Jedi Master precognition. And another thing I like about the action is that they use actual physics, whereas in No Way Home, Spidey beat Doctor Strange because haha, square root of pi, and the script says I beat you now. Here they actually put some thought into coming up with cool uses for his webs that actually make sense physics-wise, like using the webs to force a truck to take a right, using them as counterbalance, and even the science babble that they do in this film has improved. Yes, a lot of it is still just that, just babble, and I'm sure that a biochemical engineer and a physician would tear apart, but they talk about mRNA strands, which are a thing. At one point they start talking about Peter's web shooters and how they actually work, which I suspect is information taken from the comics, so it also doubles as a bit of attention for the comic tards. Generally, people rank the Tobey films as having the best action, just the way that they're shot, the execution, the aesthetics of it. And I don't know how most people rank Far From Home and Homecoming, but I personally consider them to have the most boring, most uninspired action. And this film is, you could almost say it's like above all of them. First of all, the sheer amount of action in this film is insane. Like, the amount of VFX shots and web slinging and combat is on the heavy side, but then the quality of pretty much all of it, or most of it, is also high. You have clever camera work, where Peter flips on a wall and the camera flips with him. Great changes in perspective mid-battle. A lot of it is actually him. It's actually Tom Holland in the suit, as opposed to dressed in motion tracker dots. It just looks good. It's been a hot minute since Spider-Man films looked this good. But then it also has some of the sleek, modern look of the TASM films. The colors are a bit more saturated than your average Marvel movie, thank the gods. The red red in his suit really pops nicely. The way the city looks, the color grading, the composition, the lighting in a lot of these scenes is great. You've probably seen the one where Spider-Man looks like he's sitting on a railing, when it turns out he's actually hanging upside down and the camera turns with him. There's one where you see him slightly distorted in the reflection of a puddle as he enters a building. There's a really intensely lit one with MJ with red lighting on her face, which is really appropriate for the scene. And speaking of Michelle Jones, a character I have very little love for, this movie also has TASM-worthy chemistry between the male and female lead, but without becoming overbearing like it did in TASM 2. This is the first movie out of all of these 4 Tom Holland movies where I was actually invested in the interactions between these two people. Part of it is because of the plot and the circumstances surrounding them, but it's just a better script than what we usually get. And it also has some of TASM's banter and wit, although I feel like The Amazing Spider-Man and Garfield still do it better overall. So it's got the sleek aesthetic of the Raimi films, it's got the banter, chemistry, and modern look and feel of the TASM movies, and it also has the street-level feel of the Tom Holland movies. It's zoomed in, it takes you through the nitty-gritty of the city, the streets and alleyways. The general populace is very comfortable with Spider-Man in their midst at this point. It's got the friendly neighborhood aspect on deck. In fact, it does the best job yet of making New York feel like its own character, which is a huge part of the Spider-Man mythos. It even references the Spider-Verse movies with a couple shots and visual effects that are kind of reminiscent of the multiverse glitches from those films. But most importantly, it references all this stuff without being overwritten by it, which is rare. Usually, when you channel one too many existing works into your thing ends up not having its own identity, but Brand New Day thankfully doesn't fall into that trap. It very much has its own vibe and its own story to tell. You can definitely tell there's a new director at the helm, and that Tom probably had more say in the movie-making process, which he implied many times in interviews. The movie's meant to be a metaphor for growing up, maturing, going through puberty, yes, including the gross parts, but more importantly, it addresses the main conundrum of Spider-Man, which is finding his place in the world, achieving some sort of balance and peace with his double life. One of my main criticisms of previous Spider-Tom films like Homecoming or Far From Home is they were either boring or not very Spider-Man-ish, or both. And this one very much is. Spider-Man-iness is a very important quality of Spider-Man movies that includes elements like plenty of good, high-quality action, plenty of cool web-slinging in the city, not on some fucking beach or in Europe. Good banter, great interactions between Spider-Man and other cool characters, plenty pain, misery, and vulnerability, for Peter especially, of course, which the first 2 movies kinda lacked. A compelling internal conflict for Peter, making good use of the secret identity thing, which I'm glad they continue to treat the secret identity thing seriously, because there was a moment when I thought, oh fuck, they're gonna pull an I am Iron Man again, the MCU just can't help itself, but no. It's still very much an important factor in this movie, as it should be, because it's an important factor for Spider-Man as a whole, in the comics, in the animations, everywhere. I like it when Peter is forced to keep his cards close to his chest. It creates a tension there, especially with regards to characters that he wants to reveal who he is, or other characters that really press him to reveal who he is. I think that enforced secrecy, plus all the pain and loneliness and vulnerability that Peter is forced to carry in his soul alone. Not only is that a very Spider-Man worthy thing, I think it also makes Tom Holland in particular shine as an actor. With the benefit of hindsight, only now do I realize just how fucking annoying this kid was. This kid who otherwise has every possible quality to play the perfect Spider-Man. But in the first 2 films, he just gets on my nerves for being too happy. He's annoying, he won't shut up, he just makes my misery boner wilt. And it's not to say that this film and its Peter are completely miserable. They very much find a good middle ground by the end, so we can definitely coexist a bit here. They even managed to include that sense of awe and wonder from discovering your powers, even though this Spider-Man already has powers. And then of course, the final element of Spider-Man-iness is fun. This movie's fun. I know that's subjective, but it certainly tickled my fun gland. No, that's not a euphemism. Okay, maybe a little. They make good use of the guest stars and supporting characters. Bernthal and Ruffalo both serve good functions within the story, whereas in the past, some of this stuff could get a bit overbearing and overshadow the proceedings, like the Iron Man grooming stuff. Okay, poor choice of words. Just preparing Peter to be Iron Jr., taking up the mantle, inherit the Empire, and all that bullshit. And that's because this time, the only rationale was, how do we make this fun? How do we use these 2 characters' interactions to squeeze out a smile, a tear, a heartfelt moment? Every single supporting character or guest star from other MCU movies was used the appropriate amount. I never felt like I had too little of anyone, nor that any character overstayed their welcome. Even newer characters that I didn't know a single thing about, like Blonde Widow. I was like, yeah, that was cute. Speaking of heartfelt moments, this is the first MCU film in probably a decade at this point, where moments of tension, gravity, vulnerability are not undercut by a stupid sitcom joke, which was a rare thing in Homecoming and practically not a thing in Far From Home. Which is not to say there aren't funny moments in the film, quite the contrary. Even though it's a bit of a slow burn in the beginning, Brand Your Date has some of the funniest moments in any Spider-Man film. People highlight Holland and Bernthal's interactions in particular, and they're right. They're some of the movie's high points, not just with regards to humor, but tender moments as well, which is surprising. As for Ruffalo, which, I mean, if you haven't watched any trailer, very mild spoiler warning, the Hulk's in it. But this is the best use of the Hulk since the first Avengers film. Yes, I know what I said. Ever since that first Avengers film, they never successfully managed to replicate that sense of dread and fear that the Hulk inspires. Whenever Banner turns into the Hulk, this shit should become like a borderline horror movie. And you get a little bit of that. But most importantly, it's just a return to form for the Hulk in general. Not Banner necessarily, but the Hulk. You see the Hulk go right back to square one. No Professor Hulk. No, I'm always angry, thus I control it. Which begs the question, I mean, I'm not complaining, but why is Banner not Prof. Hulk anymore? I'd have been the first in the boardroom to vote getting rid of that shit, don't get me wrong, but I mean, you can't just ignore 4 or 5 previous films worth of development for the character. You have to address them at least with a throwaway line. That would have sufficed, but they don't even give him that. Banner just has like an ankle monitor thing that keeps him in check now. Just say that there was an incident a couple years ago, the dual form thing stopped working, and you're golden. As it is, it's kind of like a middle finger to your own continuity. And speaking of middle fingers, this is a nitpick, but it bothered me. There is a scene in the film where Thanos' stupid calculus logic is brought up. Yes, they went there. The popular internet question is asked, if the problem in Infinity War was there weren't enough resources in the universe, why didn't Thanos just create double the resources and planets and everything, instead of snapping everything in half? And the way they answer that is basically, fuck you, don't question us. Which they try to play it as a joke, and they've done this kind of stuff in the past, but guys, it just never works out. Stop doing it. It always comes across as a passive-aggressive, bitchy defense from writers who don't have a better answer. It was played as a joke, haha, but really, it would have been better to just not bring it up. Just don't bring it up ever again. It was a mistake. It was dumb logic. It's fine. Just let me enjoy my Spider-Man film and get over it. A couple Ice Ages ago, I made a video where I said this: 7 villains I'd like to see in a Spider-Man film. The Man-Spider. What is best in life than seeing your beloved hero devolve into a 6-armed, multi-eyed giant spider, his spider powers entering a new stage of mutation and becoming a liability to those he swore to protect? I can't think of anything cooler than seeing a hairy set of mandibles bursting out of that mask. See the people's hero contorting and writhing as multiple limbs erupt from his inferior human form as he finally starts shooting webs from the accurate place where he's supposed to. And where did everybody go? What? Too much? And since I brought up rare wins, out of all the things I discussed in that video that I would like to see in a live-action Spider-Man film, this is the one that I least expected that they would go for, and it's the one that they went for. Now, obviously, I'm not going to spoil if they actually go through with it, or if it's some variation of it, or if it's a misdirect or anything, but it makes me feel kind of cool and warm and fuzzy inside to see them even attempting to tackle this very freaky but very cool plot line.
At one point, I was like, what if he had like fangs that come out his hands, and he had like venom spikes at one point, and then, you know, we explored the nightmare sequences of him waking up as the Man-Spider, and very quickly we were like, we do want children to enjoy this movie as well as adults, you know. The main villain of the film provoked every possible reaction out of me just sequentially. I went from curiosity to bewilderment to disappointment to cautious optimism to being critical of the whole thing. Because I saw something. You don't really get the villain revealed initially. You just get hints of them. And I kept looking and I was like, I don't know anyone in Spider-Man's Rogues Gallery that does that. Who the hell is it? And then I thought it was like they're creating a new villain specifically for this film, and I was like, oh, that's lame if they do that. And then when it was finally revealed who it is, I was like, what the hell are they doing? Huh? But it turns out I like what they're doing. But as I said, this is also where the biggest flaw of the film comes from. This is the main criticism that threatens to tear the film apart, because the way that villain is portrayed is probably going to get some strong opinionated reactions from all of nerddom. And to be clear, I don't think the portrayal itself is the problem. I think how the film reacts to said portrayal is the problem. It's like the character does some things and the movie treats those things like they don't happen. I can't really talk about it without spoiling, but
I think it's a lapse in reasoning or like some miscommunication between writers that led to this. There's also some hospital scenes near the end of the movie which are also questionable in their own way. That's a far more minor issue. It's rare to have a Spider-Tom movie where consequences stick. Pun not intended. In fact, it's rare to have an MCU movie in general where consequences stick. It's usually the illusion of change rather than actual change. And while you could argue they're kind of gearing themselves up to backtrack on a couple of things or at least bring them full circle, this whole movie is about dealing with the consequences of the last one, which is rare. To devote 2.5 hours of screen time to that. And then what else can I talk about? Length. A lot of people are bitching about the length, said the film could have been cut a little shorter. Length, I think, is a fake metric. People watched Endgame for 3 hours and loved it. Lord of the Rings fans routinely watch the extended editions and think they're too short. I think the only time you complain about a movie's length is when the movie's boring for you. Which, of course, everyone will deny if you suggest this, because it either pegs them as a hater of said movie in a case where they don't want that, or they're just the type of person that doesn't enjoy movies in general all that much compared to other activities, which, again, they will vehemently deny because movies are considered a cool, cultural activity, and no one wants to risk being considered a culturally mute swine. Oh, and the only other category of people that will bitch about a film's length, whether or not they like that movie, is reviewers and pedantic people who will argue about numbers or pride themselves on giving you the most professional rundown of the film, or pretending to care about your bladder capacity. And then those same people will go home and binge an entire season of Yellowstone, so hypocrites. I think it's kind of similar to No Way Home in that most of the movie is good, but it has one annoying problem about it. In the case of No Way Home, it was the setup of it, the first act. The way the multiverse stuff happens is kind of asinine. Both Strange and Peter have to consistently be idiots in order for it to happen. There's also some problems with wanting to save the villains and send them back to their timelines to be murdered anyway. And there's a similar kind of lapse in logic, a big one in this movie, which is pretty frustrating because it could have been averted with just like a couple lines or just like shooting a couple scenes differently. I'm pretty sure half the movie-going populace won't even notice the problem that I speak of. Or can speak of, rather. And of the remaining half, even those who do notice, I think half of that half won't care half as much as I do. So chances are you'll think it's an amazing film. I think, barring that one problem, that it's an amazing film. Probably one of the best Spider-Man films that we've ever gotten. But it could have been even better. And that's a damn shame.